a key difference was people ate the ultra processed foods faster. So the concept is it's called the Nova N-O-V-A food classification. I'm not sure why it's called Nova, but they've got sort of 4 different classifications. So one is the most unprocessed foods. So you've got sort of meat or I think milks in Nova categorized category 1, and then category 2 is kind of minimally processed. So you might make milk into butter or cheese. So those sorts. So we might make uh, uh, wheat into flour. That's kind of category 2. Category 3 is processed foods, like making bread or something like that. And then they got this category 4, which they call ultra processed foods. And the idea with ultra processed foods is it's industrially produced foods that are that there's things about sort of additives and various things like that. And the idea is the ultra processed foods aren't very good for you. So I'm going to put in a few caveats first. So one of the caveats is I think the Nova classification is not quite right. I'm not saying anything that's controversial. Well, maybe it's controversial. A lot of people think Nova classification is not quite right. Because, for example, baked beans, which is pretty healthy. Baked beans are sort of high in fiber, not too energy dense, quite nutritionally dense. They, on that classification, would be ultra processed. So they're in the same category as chocolate muffins, right? And it's not quite right that they're in the same category. So a lot of ultra processed foods are high fat, high salt, high sugar, and we know that those things are bad for us. And there is a contention about whether you need another code to say high fat, high salt, high sugar is bad for you. But Kevin Hall, who you really should get on your podcast, has done some remarkable studies where he's up in Maryland and he works for the NIH in America in Bethesda. He has this metabolic ward where he gets people to come in for weeks on end, and he feeds them all their food and he measures their metabolic rate and he does body scans. And so he did a study where he got people in random order to have 2 weeks of eating a diet which was mainly unprocessed foods, or a diet with a similar amount of protein, carbohydrate, and fat that was mainly ultra processed foods. And what he found is that on the diet with ultra processed foods, people ate more calories and they gained weight. And the gain in weight was exactly related to the extra calories they burned. So it wasn't that there was anything special about additives that made you fat. It was the ultra processed foods were, you ate more of them when you're presented with them, and it's the extra calories. So it's just like sugar makes you fat by eating more calories make you fat. It's not the sugar per se is important. Eating too many fat calories makes you fat in the same way. And one of the things that he found, and I think if you speak to Kevin, he will say they don't have a complete understanding of it, was people, a key difference was people ate the ultra processed foods faster. If you looked at the speed of eating, they ate it faster. And this might be to do with the softness of the foods, and the mouthfeel means that it's really, we eat it really fast. And others have done studies where they've quite neat studies where they can change the hardness of foods. And what happens is when foods are harder, you eat them slower and you eat less of them. But one of the reasons that's important is your gut sends appetites back to your brain to tell you that you're full. But there's a bit of a delay. So it doesn't happen straight away. You know that if you eat a big meal and then half an hour later you're feeling really ill and bloated and stuff, and you ate until you were feeling full at that point, it's because there's a delay in these feedback sensations for telling you you're full. So what happens if you eat the foods faster? It bypasses your appetite signals a bit. So I think that's at least potentially some of the story why some ultra processed foods might be associated with weight gain. It's just they're really, really easy to eat fast, and you gain weight. I mean, there's going to be more to the story than that, but that's at least a partial explanation of what might be going on.